Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions concerning this watch. Greubel Forsey, founded in 2004, is a young manufacturer. The brainchild of Robert Greubel and Stephen Forsey, Greubel Forsey launched the double tourbillon 30 degree, its first fundamental innovation and its first watch, the year it was founded. In 2004, that model, featuring two tourbillon regulators in a single assembly, was a rare tourbillon for its era, not in that it was a multi-tourbillon. It was common to see 1, 2, 3, even 4 tourbillons during that decade, but the idea of a tourbillon regulator that was both aesthetically and chronometrically relevant felt revolutionary at a time when the ornamental value of the refinement was really the only reason most people ponied up for it. But clients of Greubel Forsey wanted a more visually accessible version of their chronometrically relevant double tourbillon, and thus in 2013 the double tourbillon 30 degree Asymetrique was launched. This is it right here, an 11-piece edition in red gold. The watch is large, though not huge by Greubel standards, at 43.5 millimeters in diameter. It's 16.4 millimeters thick, 51.8 lug-to-lug. It has a 22 millimeter spacing between the lugs. On my wrist, like many Greubel Forsey watches, the size is impressive and significant and undeniable. The weight is impossible to miss, but it sits securely. I'm going to let you decide whether this fits, and whether if your wrist is my size, you're going to think that's a fit. I will say this, at 16 centimeters circumference, it's secure. I will let you decide whether it is also suitably proportional. The timepiece is massive in red gold, and you can see that the strap bears a surprising rarity for Greubel Forsey. Not all of their buckles are deployant clasps, but on something this expensive and heavy, I'm happy to see this because it makes it that much harder to accidentally drop the watch. Snapping that shut, you can see something that didn't exist back in 2013 when the model debuted. This was actually launched in 2021. Greubel Forsey's entirely plant-based, animal-free strap, which I think is a win-win. If you're an environmentalist, it uses renewable resources. If you are a humanitarian and you're concerned about the well-being of your furry friends, well, humane concerns are addressed by this non-animal based strap. And if you are a utilitarian and you just want it to last longer and deal with water better, sweat, salt, the heat and moisture of the wrist, this does that as well. Water will not degrade it. You can sweat on it all you like, clean it off with soap and water, no problems. It is very comfortable, so it's also more agreeable on the wrist thanks to this lovely suede bottom, whereas the top is almost indistinguishable from nubuck leather, so you don't have to let your friends know you're a greenie. It's black, it's matte, it's got a folded edge, monotone stitch, it's very nicely handmade, and then it's got some bolstering up top to give it some visual volume. The lugs are incredibly robust, and you can see that there's a surprising amount of concave and deflection to the lug profile. They're complex in their construction. You can see the case is complex in its construction, with the lugs being welded to the case flank and then hand finished to create that sharp break between lug and case. Difficult to do. We have a Greubel Forsey lacquered crown, combination of vertical satin and polish, and when I said that the mechanism was made more visually accessible, this is part of what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the lateral viewport. By moving the tourbillon off to the side, the asymetrique part of the watch's name, the now asymmetrical watch makes it easier to view the tourbillon, which is positioned outboard rather than inboard of the lugs now, and you really get a good sense of how the inboard tourbillon, which moves in 1-minute cycles, has a 30-degree angular orientation. So the idea is, even just sitting on your desk or your night table, because that tourbillon is always moving at an angle, it will be canceling out the effects of gravity, which is really optimal when the watch is in a static position. That's when that angled tourbillon really makes a difference. For the sake of trying to gain some chronometric benefits on the wrist, we have both the angled 1-minute tourbillon, and then if you look carefully, you can see there's an outer tourbillon that's flat relative to the dial, and that's moving at 1/4 of the speed. It makes one rotation every 4 minutes. So by combining an overcoil hairspring, 6-position adjustment, a free sprung balance, a 30-degree angled 1-minute tourbillon and then an outer 4-minute flat tourbillon, we're going to be able to have a tourbillon that can justly be called chronometrically relevant, not just pretty. And in fact, it proved to be so in 2011 at the Concours de Chronometrie. Greubel Forsey took 915 points out of 1,000, becoming the highest scoring officially scored watch ever to compete in that trial. The finishing is self-evident. All steel parts are either satinated or mirrored to extraordinary effect, and you'll appreciate that the screw heads, although quite small, have been mirrored on their top, chamfered on their slots and circumference. We have fully rounded tourbillon cage components and the bridge above. Very difficult to round something and also mirror finish it so there's no distortion. The dial, though blackened, is made of solid gold, and you will see, because I know some people will ask, there is a little bit of lume. All the hands, the numerals, the indices are also made of gold. We have an unusual display of power reserve on this watch. Greubel Forsey normally uses a hand, but this one features a rotating disc. And then we've got running seconds down at the base of the dial. If you can't quite keep track of that inner tourbillon, that is off to the rescue. The watch is 30 meters water resistant. With a watch like this, please don't tempt fate. This gives you a better view of the backside of the 1-minute tourbillon. You can really see how it's angular and driven by a bevel gear. That's why this is the Asymetrique. It is just the off-centered version of the watch for visual access. So if you think it looks a little bit like an umpire chewing a wad of gum in his cheek, baseball fans, you're not wrong, but it's there for other reasons. Taking a look at the case back, 2 barrels. Every 3.2 hours, these barrels make a rotation. The super fast rotation of the barrels means there's not a lot of ebb and flow to the torque curve. It's very flat and consistent. And then the twin barrels, which are in series, and now endow the watch with a 72-hour power reserve, which is quite impressive given that it is a very power-intensive double tourbillon. Bridges and plates are made of German silver. It's called Maillot because this watch is made in La Chaux-de-Fonds, not Germany. It is a nickel copper zinc alloy, and to give it a little bit more of a blinding silver contrast with the blackened base plate, here it's been rhodium plated. You can see that the bevels are outstanding, broad and deep, and that they terminate in interior angles where the bevels converge and crease. Difficult to do, even more so if you look at the interior angles within the spokes of the wheels. There's solarization on the barrel covers. The watch features both polished screws, principally on the dial side, though a few on the case back, and large pocket watch style fire blued screws, which I love to see. We also have golden chaton cups holding the pivot jewels as well as the barrel arbors, because hey, that's the way it would have been done in the 19th century and the 18th century, and that is the era to which Greubel and Forsey pay homage. Also, one of the most attractive features of this watch, there's not too much text on it. Some Greubel watches feature a divisive microtext that's all over the case and sometimes also the dial. Here, you really only see the text on the back and then there's not too much of it. The individual numbering, as well as the notation that this is a limited edition, and it is a limited edition, not a unique one. But all of that engraving is by hand, which is really cool. And Greubel Forsey doesn't want you to try your hand at servicing this watch, which is why a proprietary screw is used to keep the amateurs out of this case. If you love this watch, by the way, one last note, this watch has a beat rate of 3 hertz, so 6 beats per second. I may as well unload some more facts. Okay, beat rate of 3 hertz, 6 beats per second, 39 pivot jewels. The movement itself is 36.4 millimeters, so it's a huge movement, so it properly fills this case. The movement is bigger than a standard Rolex Datejust, and the 2 barrels are designed so that you cannot accidentally overwind this manual wind watch. There is a bridle-style mainspring in one of the barrels that slips like an automatic, so you can't overwind it and damage it. So if you love this watch, and there's a lot of reasons to do so, reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.